In today's episode, I'll be giving my review, reaction, and recap, not in that order, to the first season of Netflix's Dark. A very interesting show, to say the least. So let's dive right into Dark. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the dub cast. Coming into this season of Dark and just the show Dark in general, it's been on my list for quite a bit. There are a couple of shows on there that are longer episodes. I mean, this is only 24 episodes, so 26 episodes. Hopefully, this will be a quick watch through on the channel. I am trying to put in work, but these podcasts about the shows are the ones that kill me for some reason because it just takes me so long to record them. Nonetheless, Dark Season 1, I thought it was a great season. It's hard not to compare this to Stranger Things and the beautiful people over on TV Time. We're doing a lot of that in the comments, but the show's already over. The show started and then ended within the time Stranger Things has yet to do that. So put that out there now, but I think the show's a lot more different than Stranger Things. I think it's much more complex. There's a lot more characters. There's a lot much more going on. In fact, we might even need to stop this podcast for me to pull up my cheat sheet that I needed after episode 1 because there's just so many freaking characters. You have 3 different timelines, and what it looks like we're at the end of season 1, spoiler alert, looks like we're going to be introduced to a 4th timeline. Like, this show's crazy. It's hard to follow, but you got, like, once you start watching, you got to keep watching. Like, it's pretty addicting. So overall, in season 1, I thought it was pretty interesting. Somewhat hard to follow, but I don't think that negates away from the show. I think it actually adds into it because you're kind of like, who's this? Wait, who's that? What's their impact? Each character is pretty fleshed out. Like, I feel like we know most of the families pretty well, and also their origin story. And then some of the loose ends need to be tied together. This is what I mentioned with Severance. I think hopefully the show answers the questions we needed to be answered. There's also kind of like an ominous theme to it of like a higher power of time and the future affecting the past and vice versa. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting start to this Dark series, and I'm excited to dive into season 2 and season 3. My friend who recommended this to me said that that's when it gets good. The coworker I told her that I was watching this show said that that's when she stopped watching after season 1. So we'll have to see who wins out on that. Overall, I think season 1 was pretty strong, and I'm excited to get into season 2. So as usual, we'll go episode by episode, starting off with episode 1, which is titled Secrets. So, as usual, I have watched the whole season in preparation for this review, going episode by episode, so this can be beneficial because now I know some of the stuff going back to this episode and going back to the earlier episodes from knowledge later on down the line. It's bad because you won't get my genuine reaction, but I did record it on my sheet, so we'll have to see what I was thinking and then how the later events of the show affect that. So, starting with episode 1. First quote, had to write it down. If you watch any of my movie reviews, I value the first scene or a quote of a movie. So especially when they flash a quote at you like they did in this show, I think that's going to be something important down the line. Obviously, I didn't mention it in my overall season review, but the show is in German and you have to do a lot of reading, and I like that because if you're not paying attention, I'll put my hand up now. Sometimes I'm a screenager, guys. Like, it happens to us all, and the show being in German allows me to lock in and really focus, because if you look away, you're missing out on a potential conversation because if you can't read it, you don't know it. I don't know German, so there's that. So starting this episode out, we have a quote from Albert Einstein. I don't know why I said it like that. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Now, think it through, guys. I still don't really know what this means. No, it's a pretty basic quote, and I think this does describe the show pretty well. Illusion. Time is an illusion, according to the show. We got people from the future going into the past. We got people from the past going into the future. We got people in the modern day having no idea what's going on. It's crazy. So I think this quote does do a good job encapsulating it all after watching season 1. So we start this show off in June of 2019 on the 21st, and 2019 was a very emotional year for me. That's when I graduated high school, so maybe I was actually graduating around this exact time. I think the show came out in 2017, so they were doing a little bit of a future thing there. I don't know, but we'll get into the years later and how they're important. So we start with a man leaving a letter, and then he hangs himself, and he says not to open the letter before November. Now, reading the overall synopsis of the show, it's just about a kid who goes missing, and you're just like, I don't really know what the show's about. Why do people think the show's good? My friend who recommended it says it's his favorite show ever. I'm like, what's going on here? This guy's just dead, and now he's leaving a letter. Is this going to be some like, what's that movie? Love Liza, where he doesn't open the letter for a while? No, but it matters because of the storylines we learned later on, which is just, I mean, it's like boom, boom, like it's the shit just starts hitting the fan real quick, and you know. So we'll figure this out later. Flash forward 5 months later to November 4th, 2019, we are with a 16-year-old who wakes up and the power's out at his house. His mother is upstairs having sex with a dude who sneaks out of the house. Now, this is my one gripe of the whole show, realistic. My man was upstairs, you know, doing his thing, and then he just dips the set. Like, I don't think he finished the job. Knowing what I know now, I'm glad he didn't, because, you know, if that woman got pregnant, who we know is to be Hannah, and Ulrich, if Hannah got pregnant with him, it'd be over, bro. So I'm glad that he didn't, but I was like, wouldn't the guy just stay and like tell? Well, Jonas is like yelling up to her about toast and shit. I don't know. It's kind of an awkward introduction to the show because we just watch the guy kill himself, and it's like, oh, here's an affair right in your face above a 16-year-old who's like in the house. But yeah, that's how we meet our main character of Jonas, his mother Hannah, and the woman or man she's having an affair with, Ulrich. So Ulrich, he goes back to his family. He has a normal family. So we learn pretty quickly that he has been cheating on his wife. And he works for the police, and there's a kid missing for 13 days, which we never really get clarification on where Eric was. Eric is the missing kid. It's implied in where he's going to be, but, you know, weird storyline for Eric, and we still don't really know what's going on with that, where Eric is. I think we actually maybe pick him up again. I think if not, it's episode 2 with Eric. So yeah, someone's been missing for 13 days, which is crazy irony because Ulrich's brother, Mikkel, not Mikkel, what's the brother's name? Oh, I forget the brother's name at this point. He's not even in the show. He's just the guy who's missing. So his brother had actually disappeared 33 years ago to the day, in a very similar fashion. Never found him. So that's something right away that you got, the bell's got to be clicking in your head. And we do pick up right back with Eric. So we see Eric is this redhead kid who's missing. No one really knows where he's at. He's locked in a basement with the song from the 1980s, Right Round, playing over and over again. I guess there's worse songs to be stuck in a room with, but if you're going to be stuck listening to a song over and over again, you're going to hate it. I've had that experience before. Don't ask me. I've witnessed other people go through it before. You know, it's not the best experience in the world, even if it's like a somewhat decent song. So I feel sorry for Eric, and, you know, prayers for Eric because we don't really get to like hang out with Eric at all. And he, you know, I think his fate is somewhat clear by the end of the season, but nonetheless, there is an old man. This kind of jumps around, and this was like before I knew the characters. I think this is Helge. He is saying it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. He keeps saying it, and he interrupts the school meeting. Obviously, you know, very concerned parents meeting up after Eric's disappearance, and he keeps saying it. Walks in, he says it's going to happen again. You know, that'll be important later on, but not now. Michael. So Michael is the father of Jonas. He's the one who killed himself at the beginning of the episode. His seemingly mother opens the letter he left to and said specifically not to open before a specific time, and she is sobbing reading it. We don't really understand what this letter is until a couple episodes later. So, you know, right away, like going back to episode 1, they're kind of throwing it right at you. You know, they're throwing darts at you, but I appreciate it. Because now looking back on this, it's like, oh, this is what I was missing, you know. So Innes, we know, is reading this letter and is sobbing. We don't really hang out much with Innes until later on in the season. So picking it up with a bunch of kids meeting up, They are scared by something making a noise. I believe it's Bartos, Jonas. I need the diagram. See, I knew it would come in. I can't remember that other kid's name. Mikel, Jonas, Bartos, Martha, and there's one more. Um, what's this kid's name? Hannah's son. That's who I'm looking. Not Hannah's son. Here we go. Magnus. So Magnus is Ulrich's son, and then Mads is the one who's missing from earlier that I missed the name of. So nice little handy diagram. Hopefully there's a season 2 one because I'm gonna be lost without it. So they're scared by something in the woods. They're going to Bartos, who is one of my least favorite characters. His big idea is to go steal Eric's drug supply because Eric's gone out of the picture. So you go get his stuff out of the caves. They had to bring along Mikel because he's under the watch of Magnus. It's weird. It's a weird group of people. Martha's also there because she's dating Bartos. So Jonas stumbles after they run away from the sound, and he's confronted by a man with mud type liquid all over him. Looks like Michael, but we don't really ever get the answers of who this guy is with the mud covered all over him. My guess is Michael or Mikel. I don't know. I don't know who that was that saw interacted. I'd actually would need to see that scene over again. And then Mikel goes missing, and the old man Helge says too late, and the mother just keeps sobbing over and over again. Obviously, just lost her kid. So right there, this is your whole big bang of the series. Mikel has gone missing, and that's what's going to set off the events of the first couple episodes, and basically, set off this cycle seemingly that we learn about later on. The therapist has something to tell his cop wife. This is Peter telling Charlotte, but he can't get it out. Peter's involvement's super weird. I think we do get clarity on that, but it's not going to be for a while. And Peter's storyline was like, I know he's bad, but he just appears randomly, and it's like, oh, he's probably going to do something sus. And then it's like, oh, you don't hear from him for 2 or 3 episodes. So at the end of the episode, they find a dead kid, but it is not Mikel or Eric. So that's really interesting because now you have a dead body with no name attached to it and 2 missing kids. So that's going to be hard for the police department to figure out. And we see Eric strapped into a chair and a device put over his eyes. Still don't know what that is or what they're trying to accomplish with that, but that's where we leave off episode 1. So as always, look at my favorite and least favorite character of each episode. Favorite character of episode 1, I'm going to give it to Jonas. Kind of a weak episode to give a favorite character to, just, being at the introductory episode. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts, but, it seemed like a decent dude, Jonas, and I back that point now, so I'm giving it to Jonas. Least favorite going to Bartos. He stole Jonas's girl, which I didn't mention before, so Jonas and Martha kind of had a thing going on, and then Bartos jumped in while Jonas was in a mental hospital dealing with the loss of his father. And so that's when Bartos jumped in, fucked up, and then he had a bad plan to steal the weed from the woods and steal Eric's stash. So that's where we leave off episode 1. Episode 2 is titled Lies, and so we pick up this episode 9 hours since the disappearance of Mikel, and we see a man holding a dead bird while police search a field. I believe this person holding the dead bird is the quote-unquote stranger, is what his character title is in TV time. Not sure if we ever get a name until his reveal later on in the season, but I'll just call him the stranger for now. Interesting guy to start this off, kind of ominous and creepy. We cut to Jonas. He is seeing a black cat in a dream, being called to by the man in mud once again, waking up for the second time. So you kind of have like a dream within a dream. I mean, Jonas, it's pretty clear early on that Jonas is gonna have a big part in this, even though he's kind of like on a side quest throughout this whole first season. Or is his quest the main quest and everything else is kind of a side quest? I think looking back on it, maybe I can wreck on that if something happens. But I don't know. I feel like he was kind of side questing this whole season, not really dealing with our universal characters like everyone else was interacted, meshing, where Jonas really only has like the Martha relationship, the Bartos relationship, and the Hannah relationship, and barely Hannah relationship. Nonetheless, we move forward. There is a nuclear door in the cave, so Mikkel was lost over by those caves. Obviously, the caves play a big part in this season because they are a door to the past and the future. And there's a nuclear door there that Ulrich tries to get into, but can't early on in the season. You know, you're very suspect about the nuclear plant. What do they know? Still am a little bit suspect about what they know over there, what's going on. Ulrich can't get through this door. And then we find, or we see Ulrich's father, Trante, hide a bloody shirt, and his mother seemingly like knowing something's going on. But what's up with Trante, dude? You know, there's just so many things going on this season that it's hard to keep track. So Trante, so far not doing great by hiding a bloody shirt, especially since Mikkel has just gone missing. Jurgen is scheming with a nuclear power plant. Who is Jurgen? I don't even know what these people are. I'm gonna pull up my sheet. Jurgen. Is there even a character on this name, Jurgen? No. Okay. So someone was scheming with the nuclear power plant. I'm assuming maybe it was Alexander, or I don't know. I don't know who Jurgen is. I'm sorry that I'm just spewing here. Anyways, Alexander is the new leader of the power plant. He does not want to let Ulrich into the power plant to take a look for Mikkel, since there is that nuclear door. So right off the bat, you're suspect on Alexander as well. We cut to Bartos. He's finding a phone in Eric's stash with 3 attempts remaining on it before it locks. So that actually ties a dot for me for later on in the season. But because some of these things you just forget, like you forget what even happened in the first like 5 episodes, because the last 5 episodes are like bomb, bomb, bomb. You know, sometimes you forget the context building up, going back, re-seeing that now. It's like, okay, that makes sense. Still don't know who your Jurgen is. So Bartos finds this phone, 3 attempts left, which you're not going to get it in 3 attempts. There's like 10 million possible combos. But yeah, so he's got the stash, he's got a new phone. Ulrich, this is a pretty big Ulrich episode of him kind of just being that like reactionary dad, lost his kid, gonna go try and find him. He's doing some digging around Jurgen's property, and he finds another drug stash. Okay, I know who Jurgen is. He's the father of somebody. He just works at the nuclear power plant. He's one of the nuclear. We don't see Jurgen again throughout the first season, really. He's the father of. Oh, he's Eric's father. See, these are the pieces that come together, guys. We're doing it live here together. So Jurgen, you know, is a little bit suspect. He's Eric's father, and then they didn't really take a look at him. He's kind of pressing to. He's pressing the police to do more to find Eric. Now he was scheming at the nuclear power plant, probably trying to figure out where Eric was, and then now there's another drug stash after Ulrich breaks into his property. Back at the police station, there's dead birds outside. The man who checked into the hotel room, the stranger, crosses off where on the wall there's a poster that says, "Where is Mikkel?" He crosses that off instead to say, "When is Mikkel?" Which, knowing what we know now, wouldn't he know that already? So a little bit suspect on both ends there, even at face value, and once you know what's happened already. So interesting stuff there for the stranger. Mikkel. We finally pick up Mikkel. You know, the questions, was this going to be a Stranger Things thing where we don't see, you know, Will until episode 9 and he's in the freaking upside down? No, we see Mikkel right away. He pulls up to his house, what he believes is his house, and it is his house because it's Ulrich there. Except Ulrich's super young and Mikkel is now in the past. He's like, what's going on? What's the year? You know, what's the current events? Kind of trying to figure that out. It's Chernobyl. It's 1986, 33 years before the events of this season and episode. So we're so far 1986 just got there, and 2019. So already 2 timelines, 2 episodes in, crazy stuff. So second episode in, already throwing you a big one right there. Favorite of this episode, I'm giving to Ulrich. Just grinding to find Mikkel. Got to respect the passion out of him. Lost his kid, had some questionable actions throughout, but I got to give it to Ulrich. Least favorite going to Alexander. Just thought something was suspect going on with him, and I don't like it. Not giving the warrant, not letting Ulrich search the property. So that'll wrap up episode 2. Episode 3 is titled Past and Present. So once again, at the end of episode 2, we were with Mikkel at Ulrich's house in the 80s. He is here again, and he sees Ulrich's mother in the house. She begs him to help him find Mads, which, knowing their situation now of how they're, they look pretty similar. You're like, is Mikkel just Mads? But no, they look pretty similar. She's like, you're not Mads. Try and help me find Mads. Clearly, she's going a little bit insane after having lost her son. Very desperate. This kind of creeps Mikkel out, and he struggles to find any clues after he visits the school as well. So not really much there for him to figure out. So Mikkel is now in the 80s. Back to the present, we have the dead birds are there once again, and there's also 33 sheep exactly dead in a field near the nuclear plant. We don't really learn about what is causing this, but it's got to be, something happening underground or in the air when certain events happen. I think, the power going out is the pretty common indicator of the time travel theme throughout this season. We'll see if that changes throughout, but 33 sheep exactly dead. 33 I think is a very important number for this show so far, so we'll see if that plays out any further. RIP to those sheep. The sheep farmer, I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know why we can't just time travel in peace and not kill animals, especially the birds. There's so many birds dead. So Mikkel has made his way to the police station in the 80s. The old police chief, Egon, let me just double check that because I feel like I'm going to look like an idiot if I don't have this stuff right. It's Egon. He says he'll make sure that Ulrich never works for the police after thinking that he was the one who hurt Mikkel, which Egon's got it out for Ulrich, which is weird considering what we learn about in a previous life. But it seems like these two are just always meant to be rivals, which this is kind of a one-way rivalry between Egon, who's like this cop who's trying to retire, just trying to pin a bunch of stuff on Ulrich. So we don't really know what made him hate Ulrich. I don't think. Maybe it'll come out later in this review. I'm kind of forgetting, there's so many. If I get anything wrong, like, let's not, put me over the coals, man. There's so much shit going on in this show. So he'll make sure Ulrich will never work for the police, which is ironic because Ulrich works for the police in 2019, thinking he's the one who hurt Mikkel. And then Mikkel grabs the lighter off of Egon's desk, which I thought was a little bit weird. And then who do we see to come pick him up? But his future mother, aka caretaker, aka is Ines. She comes to pick him up. She's a nurse. Aren't going to be, close yet, but she's going to help nurse him back to health. So that was nice to see there, the beginning story of Ines and Mikkel. Ulrich, back in the present, is upset with, in the past, he's still upset with Egon Tiedemann, because they have not found anything in the Mads investigation. Seems like the police in this town, although it is a pretty hard case to solve when you're including time travel and all of that, have not done a great job, because we saw the same thing happen with Eric. They're pretty frustrated. Also, it's just pretty natural for a family whose kid's gone missing to be upset. So Ulrich is part of that crew. His younger brother has gone missing. Seems like they had a pretty good relationship, so he's upset with Egon now that his brother's been missing for a little bit of time. So back in the present, they do kind of an autopsy on the sheep. The findings are they all went into sudden cardiac arrest and their eardrums are burst. Just a terrible way to go out. I mean, I hate seeing animals die. Sheep, I'm like, I don't really care about sheep, but still, that sounds like a terrible death. So I'm sorry for the sheep. Must be some sort of sound barrier going on. Like, it's still unclear on what's, we still got 2 seasons to go. So it's still unclear on some of the bigger things happening here. I don't know if we ever go back to the sheep, but yeah, I didn't like that at all for the sheep. Back in 1986, we meet Claudia. She is the new head of the nuclear plant at that time. Come a couple years later, I have to pull up my handy sheet every time you see my hand. Sorry, I'm doing that. Her son-in-law will be doing that. So there's a little tidbit for you, some parallels there. But she was told by her old boss, quote unquote, what we know is a drop, what we don't know is an ocean, and there's mad barrels she's looking at. I need someone to explain this barrel thing to me, man. What's going on with the barrels? I don't know what's going on with the barrels. But that's a pretty good quote for life. What we know is a drop, what we don't know is an ocean. I mean, I'm pretty sure even Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and the smartest people you can think of would say that. It's, especially when you're watching fucking Dark. So we also have Regina. I haven't talked about Regina yet. I believe she was in episode 1, being kind of a little upset at the parents' meeting, being kind of a Karen there. It's understandable, you don't want your kid being in one of the next ones taken. She cut herself when she was in high school. We see her old version of herself, and she kind of reveals the wrist. Regina in high school had a tough go of it, seemingly. Didn't really have a lot of friends. Seemed like a nice enough girl, just maybe was like a nerd, and people didn't want to mess with her. I don't know. I felt bad for Regina, and especially with her present self later on in this show. So Regina had it tough, kind of an interesting character there. Charlotte, 1986 Charlotte, is keeping dead birds in the fridge and drawing them, which is interesting because in the present day, she's the one investigating those dead birds in 2019. So there is some sort of connection between the birds. Obviously grew out of that little thing she had going on there with keeping them. But now these should be clicking for people. It's like, I was drawing dead birds and keeping them in a fridge in 1986. Now there's dead birds again in 2019. It is 33 years later, so maybe your memory's not that great. I don't know. I'm not 33 yet, if you couldn't tell. So maybe in 33 years I'll be able to remember this filming this exact podcast. Wouldn't that be crazy? But no, I mean, Charlotte, weird dichotomy. I think the first couple episodes are trying to show you who they were and who they are now, and then some of the same interest stuff are just parallels. The birds are the parallel for Charlotte. I like Charlotte's character. Ironic to see Ulrich and Hannah talking together back in the day. This is before we even know half the shit that goes on. Seems like Ulrich and I can't remember these people's names. What's the woman's name? Ulrich and Katharina were always a strong match in high school, but Hannah was always trying to sneak in. I didn't realize she was a couple years younger. At first glance, a couple times you see them, you don't really realize that, but Ulrich's probably 3 or 4 years older than Hannah. Obviously, it's Germany in the 1986, so they're all just going to the same school. But I thought that was ironic to see them together when essentially they're going to, Ulrich's going to cheat on his wife to be with Hannah later on in life. So Mikkel runs out of the hospital. He doesn't really know what's going on yet. Ultimately, he's going to have to make the decision to just hang out in 1986, but that's not going to be right now. He's still tweaking over being in 1986 and trying to get home. Innes sees him run out. Claudia's book gift given to her by Helge, old or middle-aged Helge version, is The Journey Through Time, which is going to be a very important book throughout this first season, especially. I don't know what happens in later seasons, obviously. Journey Through Time is referenced a lot. A lot of the lines are read from Journey Through Time, I believe. So, I don't know. That's kind of where the show loses me when we're going into book shit and talking about the actual time being linear and all that crap. Just show me this crazy shit happening, I understand that. I understand they gotta throw in that background at you, but I'm not reading Journey Through Time as much as you fucking promote it. Ulrich makes his way into the caves with a crowbar to remove that nuclear door, as Mikkel is also in the caves trying to come back from 1986. Ulrich hears him calling for help, but ultimately is not able to find him. There's a special way you need to travel through these dimensions, and they don't, obviously, neither of them have the key to it, as Mikkel was accidentally transported, and Ulrich has no idea what he's doing at this point. And then at the end of this episode, we see someone is working on a machine that has all sorts of bells and whistles. I'm not even sure what the point of this machine is, even after season 1. I don't really know what it does. It does have a ton of bells and whistles. It's a cool machine. It's giving Fracture. It's giving Anthony Hopkins Marble Machine and Fracture, but just way cooler and way more mechanisms. So that's where we leave off episode 3. My favorite of this episode was Mikkel. It was funny to see him just wander around in 1986 while being from 2019. Also, I respect his effort to try and get back home. It's not like he just gave up. He did eventually, but not yet. Least favorite is going to Egon Tiedemann. I'm just trying to implicate Ulrich, even though he hasn't done anything wrong yet. So that's where we leave off episode 3. Episode 4 is titled Double Lives, And we start this episode out with another new character who we've just met, the daughter of Peter and Charlotte, Elizabeth. She is deaf, and she says something about Mikkel that's pretty interesting. She says she doesn't like him. He's a show-off and a jerk and doesn't care if he comes back. Pretty interesting to hear that from a, 10-year-old kid. So right off the bat, Elizabeth's a little bit spicy. Wonder if we'll see more Elizabeth in season 2. I feel like she kind of had these 1 or 2 episodes, but never really re-emerged herself as a character. Obviously, there's so many characters to get through, but Elizabeth doesn't like Mikkel. Jonas, back with Jonas. Haven't really picked up with him in a while. He's walking into the caves as the man who checked into the hotel earlier, aka the stranger, watches him walk into the caves. So that's something interesting there. That's kind of their Jonas's main storyline is with the stranger. Charlotte, she's going beast detective mode. She's pulling full footage from the wildlife camera with a license plate. And whose license plate does she unveil? Her husband Peter's license plate. And he is also removing the red soil from his shoes as we see this revelation. So Peter's been up to some sus shit. We don't know what's going on. And Charlotte may begin to be a little bit suspect about Peter's involvement. Obviously, Peter and Charlotte's relationship back and forth is pretty interesting. I'm not sure if they get into it now, but they're kind of this, in case I didn't write it down, they're kind of this like forced relationship with their kids. Like they don't really love each other. Peter has gone to a prostitute in the parking lot of the nuclear power plant, which is an interesting spot for the prostitute. But he's more into men. She's just doing it to keep the kids in. It's tough to watch between the two because then, certain events happened later in this episode. So we'll see that when that happens. So Francesca is their other daughter, older daughter. She is the same age as Magnus. She makes a weird drop and then picks up something after leaving class early, which is super respectable of her, just walking out of class all the way to the woods, getting money, and then just walking back. Magnus is going mad Joe Goldberg mode and just following her. I don't really know what that was about. Obviously, we see them in episode 1. I didn't mention that part, but they kind of have this weird interaction of like smoking weed. She says, "You have shit weed." It's like dumb high school flirting stuff. So eventually they will end up together, obviously, because what woman doesn't love their stalker? Nonetheless, Charlotte is in that parking lot talking to that prostitute, like I just said, asking if Peter was there on Monday, the day that Michael disappeared. The person, I'm not sure if this person's male or female, what they identify as, so I'm just going to say they. They say that Peter has not been back in over a year, and she now goes to the cabin, which they own in the middle of the woods, and she finds the red soil, and then while she's doing a little bit of investigating, it seems like, this is one of those shows where it's like if you just took one more step, if you just didn't get that call at that exact time, then it wouldn't work out that way. But life happens. She gets a call from someone and then says, "He did what?" So never will know really what was in that cabin, and we will find out eventually, but not in this episode. So Francesca, we find out about her little scheme. She's got the money in the envelope after Magnus steals it out of her bag, so she was picking up money. She tells him that her dad is gay and the marriage between Charlotte and Peter is over, and then they make out, which was a really creepy scene of Magnus just like watching her dance, and then they're in the locker room. She's like naked, and then he's like watching her. It was a weird scene, but good for them. Magna and Francesca getting it on. A lot of people finding love in the show, so maybe that's good hope for your boy here. Probably not, but nonetheless. Ulrich, said, "Fuck it, I'm going over." He's going to crawl over the barbed wire fence of the nuclear power plant, and then they get him instantly. Obviously, it's a nuclear power plant, so they're going to know if you're coming over the fence, brother. Tough luck for the boy, but he's got a black eye now, and, he's becoming one of those, like, spiraling cops who has the kid missing too close to home, so it's becoming a potential conflict of interest. It's getting bad between Ulrich and trying to find Mikkel. Elizabeth, meanwhile, was supposed to be picked up after school. Just says fuck it because her teacher left early. She never even bothered to call her parents. No one called her parents. And then when they're not there, obviously Charlotte's investigating the disappearances, and Peter is, up to his sus shit. Also, I just realized the thing that Charlotte was getting called about was Ulrich going over the fence at the nuclear power plant. So now, see, dots connect, guys, when you take notes. Anyways, Elizabeth wanders off after no one's there to pick her up. and she's walking in the rain all by herself, sees this candy wrapper, which I think is supposed to be an important like memento of the season, but I just don't really see the connection of it. I'm sure there's probably like a YouTube video like the candy wrapper that explains everything in Dark season 1. I don't know. Nonetheless, her hat has came off as Charlotte finds it in the woods. We cut to the log cabin. Someone's in there, and the old man, Helge, left the nursing home right when this was happening as well. So seemingly he has an indicator, even though he's somewhat suffering through dementia or Alzheimer's or something. He has an indicator of when these crazy events of kids missing is going to happen. Elizabeth wasn't actually lost. Thank God. We would have lost another child character after, she has a couple good moments this episode. But she was not lost. She comes back home, and someone gave her a gold pocket watch. It was Noah. Now, Noah, this is our first, soft introduction to Noah, who becomes a very interesting character later on in the season. And Charlotte used to own the pocket watch because it says for Charlotte on it. So maybe if we can get the backstory of that pocket watch. But yeah, how does Noah have this? How did he just give it to Elizabeth without being, Elizabeth's deaf also, so maybe, I don't know. It's a weird situation here of why Noah seemingly doesn't take girls, it's only guys they're interested in. So that's something there. We go back to the stranger. He breaks into Jonas's room and marks something for him on the map, which this should have been crazy signs for Jonas. I think he's going to discover this later on, but it's like if someone's breaking into your room and drawing stuff in your map, would you be a little bit suspect about that, Jonas? I don't know, maybe just me. Helge says he has to stop Noah, as someone who was sent by Noah encounters Yasin. Yasin was Elizabeth's friend at school. He was also, I don't think he was deaf, he just knew ASL, so that was very nice of him to talk to Elizabeth in ASL. I think she says he's her boyfriend, and now Yasin is missing because Noah, someone from Noah's camp, took him. So that'll wrap up episode 4. My favorite from this episode is Charlotte, just putting in that work, respect. Least favorite, Magnus, stalking woman, shouldn't be rewarded with makeout sessions. Am I crazy? Shaking my head. So that's it for episode 4. Episode 5 is titled Truths, one of the episodes that contains a major plot understanding. Some of us saw it on the wall happening before. Some of us LeBron'd it in this episode, which we'll get to. But yeah, ending's definitely crazy, but can't get to the ending without starting at the beginning. So we start with Ulrich. He has missed some calls from Hannah over this time. Hannah seems a little bit desperate, needs her affair back in her life. Clearly was always aspiring to be with Ulrich. So, maybe give him a call or two. I'm sure it'll be fine. 22 missed calls? How do you call someone 22 times in a row? You're in your mid-40s at least. Damn, Hannah. She's obsessed. And this was the indicator. This should have got the alarm bells going in my mind, especially Ulrich not picking up. But he didn't even know the big facts of the case at this point. We don't even know the big case at this point. It's crazy. Ulrich has not answered 22 missed calls from Hannah. It's like, Hannah, get the message, lady. Hannah, we'll get to more Hannah later. So, as we saw at the end of last episode, Yasin has disappeared. It's official now. Why are these kids walking home alone? We saw Mads disappear 33 years ago. We've seen Eric disappear. Now we've seen Yasin disappear. Why would you let a 10-year-old kid walk anywhere alone? It's crazy. I'm not a parent, so I can't, I don't know if you want to be too intrusive or whatever, but we have cars. It's 2019. Why are these kids walking home alone? Poor Yasin, man. Charlotte, she pulls out the receipts on Peter. Where were you when Michael disappeared? I see your license plate. I see your shoe has red soil. What's going on here? You got to explain. You may be part of these disappearances. What's your comeback? Where were you? Oh, you're nuts. Basic excuse of how Charlotte had to keep pressing his ass. If you're just going to call me nuts when I come at you with facts, you're hiding something. If you're just going to react with emotion like that, you're hiding something. So I still am sus on Peter. I feel like I'm remembering or not remembering a scene that happened later on. We'll get to that in the review, I guess. But Peter, sus, bro. Especially when you're acting like that. And Charlotte, she's pulling out receipts on your ass and you got nothing for her. Yeah, I'm sus on you. And we're not even halfway through the season. Noah, calls Bartos on the phone. He found what the hell it looked like Bartos left one attempt left in case something were to happen like this, where he gets a phone call and you can just answer the phone, which is like the one good thing about if you ever lose your phone, you can just call it and then someone can pick it right up, unless they put your phone in lockdown for like whatever amount of days, but that means they have bad intentions because they're trying to lock into your phone. So there you go. Nonetheless, this is like a flip phone. So Noah calls him on the phone. Very suspect moment of Bartos and Noah. There's a very interesting fan theory that I want to address. I feel like I will say organically, I did not have some of these thoughts on my own because TV time, some things happen on TV time. I don't get spoiled, but there's theories. It's like Stranger Things off season, shit happens. Yeah, but Noah is going to call up Bartos, set up a meet. We'll see what goes on with that. Hannah pulls up to Ulrich's house and essentially forces a conversation after walking inside and talking to Katerina, and forces this conversation with Ulrich. At this point, I thought Katharina low-key knew what was going on between Ulrich and Hannah. You could kind of pick up vibes, but, we know the no. She didn't actually know, so she didn't low-key know. So there's one I got wrong. I thought maybe she low-key knew. Wrong. So Bartos, he believes he's meeting Eric's dealer. Obviously, we just saw Noah call him on the phone. And he wants Jonas to come along. I'm sure this will end well. Last time we went to go get drugs together. This time will be mighty dandy. Jonas, come along. Crazy. I don't like Bartos. Noah meets Mikkel in the church in 1986, I believe. This priest Noah is pushing religion onto Mikkel. Yeah, it would have to be 1986 because Mikkel and are dead. So Ulrich grills Hannah both in the present time and in the past. He tells her to get lost in the present. Get out of my life. You're just here harassing me and my family, walking into my house. Respectable from Ulrich because she's called you 22 times. How many hints can he give if you're not picking up 22 phone calls? He had also told her to get lost in high school. Still was dating Katerina at the time. Hadn't got together with her. She's a lot younger in high school, so probably just was like, fuck off. I don't want to talk to you. Jonas meets his follower, the stranger. The stranger says he knew his father and gives him a small monologue. This was the one scene that I was thinking about the next day. I was like, what he said was probably super important, and I wasn't paying as much attention as I should, but I can't go on YouTube and look up spoilers because then I already looked up season 2 trailer Dark, and that's what I like to do in between seasons, especially when I wait so long to fucking podcast about it. I need the trailer. Severance season 2 trailer, goated. Nonetheless, I looked up the trailer, and then all of a sudden I was getting shorts. I got one YouTube short about Dark, so that's the rabbit hole you can go down. Shit can just spiral, and you can get spoiled instantly. I've gotten spoiled on Walking Dead. I've gotten spoiled on other shows just by searching YouTube clips. So unfortunately, I cannot go back and listen to this monologue until after I'm done with the show. That'll probably be one of the first 5 things I look up after I finish this whole entire show. So yeah, he did know his father. That's the important part. Other stuff happened, but maybe I'll pick that up later on. Mikkel from the future meets Hannah, and Hannah meeting Mikkel. This is what set alarm bells off in my head. This is when I had my LeBron. I know Kobe was going to drop 80 that night. I'm like, Mikkel equals Michael. It's simple. You're just changing a couple letters around, and they had like a chemistry. I think they try to show you this little. I mean, granted they're like 12 years old, but it's like you could see the chemistry there. Where Hannah's like, if I'm not gonna get Ulrich, at least got Mikkel. That's what it felt like to me. And once that happens, it's like maybe they're gonna fall in love. No, Hannah's gonna creep on Ulrich and Katerina, doing it for the first time in the school, which goes on a crazy arc after that. Anyways, in the present, Martha and Jonas are talking after Martha's been kind of distant from the show, basically, but she's been distant from Bartos. They're not dating anymore, seemingly, and she's kind of having a tough time like Jonas did. They kind of bond over that, and they share a kiss after he attends her school show, and also by doing that, he's also ditching the meeting with Bartos that he was supposed to go to meet Noah. And while that's happening, Bartos gets in the car with Noah. Some devious shit going on in that car. I know that for sure. So Ulrich lies about cheating on Katerina. This is the moment, guys. Hannah reports that she saw a rape between Ulrich and Katerina. What was the point of this? Like, it's this just leads to the Hannah hate train taking off from the station, and I don't want to be one of those people who only hates women characters. There's many male characters you can go back through my reviews that I hate. But it's like, damn, bro, Hannah's up there with like Hannah's worse than Skylar White to me. Skylar White did no shit like this. Joffrey's fucked up, but like, it's crazy, bro. She's a complete op. She reports Ulrich raping Hannah or Ulrich raping Katerina when clearly that did not happen. So Ulrich gets arrested by this guy who's chomping in the bit to arrest him for something. So this is crazy. You love him so much, you got him arrested. Nice job. Jealousy, loser, Hannah, loser. L move, L aura, L everything for Hannah. Meanwhile, in the present, Jonas receives a package from the stranger, and it has a lantern and a letter stating not to open it before November 2019, which was the letter we saw in episode 1 in Ines' hands that made her sob. He reads the letter because I believe now it is past that date, and we come to find out the true facts. Mikkel is Michael, so everything is connected. So Mikkel went back in time to 1986, stayed there, made a life for himself, and then seemingly killed himself before Mikkel's disappearance, because that would fuck with time if you go back in time and then you're there while you're disappearing. Or, well, he was there for most of Mikkel's life, right? So that's a little bit crazy, because he just saw himself grow up, which I guess if you don't touch that, the younger version of yourself, he doesn't know. So it's like a weird time loop where Mikkel saw himself grow up to be a kid, and this adult knew, but the kid obviously never knew that he was going to become Jonas's dad. And that version of him, it's weird to figure out these loops, because there's another character loop that we see. I mean, there's multiple character loops. It's like, how does time really work in the show? You know, it's a great reveal. It's shocking, but it's like, how does time actually work? Because you have Mikkel go back in the past, grow up and watch himself grow up, but then has to kill him. I feel like Mikkel wouldn't want to just ditch Jonas and Hannah. We don't really know what went on with him. And Ines, his mother, was clearly distraught over this fact. It doesn't seem like he would want to do that willingly. So he had to kill himself before he disappeared. It's complicated. This show is very complicated, which I like. I like that. So yeah, Jonas has seemingly been the only one to figure this out, that Mikkel is Michael. Well, also Ines knows. So Ines, we'll get her side from the story later on. But bomb dropped, man. Mikkel is Michael, so that makes sense. So Jonas's dad is the kid who disappeared, which is crazy that he was hanging out with his own dad at 12 years old. Then he went back in time, meets Hannah. So much to digest there. Yeah, hopefully I did a good job explaining like how fucking complicated that reveal is. So nonetheless, last scene we see here is Helge. He's a clock worker. And I don't actually think this was Helge. This is a different character, so I got this one wrong. It's the guy who makes the machines. He's a clock worker, and then the bearded man walks into his store. The stranger walks into his store. So there's that for you, just the macro of it all. So yeah, huge, crazy reveal. Great episode. Favorite of this episode is going to Mikkel / Michael. Just beasted life, got sent back to 1986, stood there, made a life for himself. Mad respectable there. Least favorite going to Hannah. False reporting of rape was crazy. Jealousy, L. This is just the start for Hannah, but I did not like that arc out of Hannah and this decision to fake a rape case. That'll wrap up episode 5. Episode 6 is titled Sic Mundus Creatus Est. We start this episode out with potentially Regina. At this point, I was still confused on who the characters were, having a nightmare about Ulrich and Katerina, leaving her tied up next to the caves as a kid. This is Regina confirmed later on because of things we see. So not nice actions by Ulrich and Katerina when they were in high school, but we learn later on why they were doing this stuff to her, and maybe someone who will come and help her out. Don't know why that was so hard for me to say, Moving on, Martha is frustrated with being cooped up by Katharina, obviously with Mikhail missing for a while. She has not been allowed to leave the house much, even though Magnus has just been allowed to go out and stalk Francesca for whatever he wants to do. Martha has been cooped up. Katharina may be looking out for her daughter, even though, once again, the killer is not really looking. The people that are being taken are not women at all. It's mostly men, young men. But she's being frustrated with that, and this resulted in a little bit teen back and forth. A little down moment for Katharina where she slaps her. I didn't like that out of Katharina. This kind of, honestly, the second half of the season is pretty downward slope for Katharina, just mentally for her character and some of the stuff we see her do. Meanwhile, her husband Ulrich is pressing his dad about Tronte, about his whereabouts when Mads disappeared, and low-key Ulrich was kind of cooking here when we saw Tronte earlier in the season washing those bloody pants, hiding those pants. Tronte, I don't know what's up with him. Ulrich, maybe we'll find the key to what's going on, but, doesn't look real great after the end of this first season about where Ulrich's at. But I'm definitely sus on Tronte and Peter, and we'll see them together in a couple episodes, or maybe it might be this episode. I always say we'll see it. Yeah, it's led to this episode. Nonetheless, we'll get to it. The mother says that Tronte did have an affair with Claudia, the mother being Jana. She's sort of irrelevant this season, kind of just as Tronte's mostly like wife and just really her role in the season. But she says he did have an affair with Claudia, who we see as this kind of powerful woman. So Claudia and Tronte were getting it on. That's another interesting layer to add to this crazy story going on. And Regina was in fact the last person to see Mads alive, so that may be part of the reason why Ulrich and Katharina are lashing out at her and bullying her and leaving her tied up next to the caves. So Katharina in the real time is pretty frustrated with her interaction with Martha. She gets the phone bill, finds out through backtracking, back channels, checking the numbers that Ulrich's been calling Hannah a lot, and this is going to lead to some certain actions coming in the next couple of episodes. But I was pretty surprised because I thought Katharina kind of caught on to the fact that Ulrich was cheating. Seemed like he was out for a while when he was on his cheating escapades. Maybe he was just pretending to be doing police work. I don't know. But yeah, not great for Ulrich, not great for Katharina, because this is going to lead to the beginning of her spiral. So we find out Ulrich does think Regina was the one to report the rape. Obviously, it's a rape case. So you can't be out and about, or you can't be out in the open about who committed or who was the witness in the case, especially since Hannah at the time was pretty young reporting that. So they blame it on Regina. I don't know why they thought it was Regina. Regina in the real time, or not in the real time, in 1986, reams him out and says it definitely wasn't her. And then he finds the witness report. No, that was in the real time. He was like, she was like, you really thought it was me? No. And then that leads him to go try to find the witness report, which I'm surprised he didn't do, being in the police force for a while. You never want to look at your own file about this controversial case that you're involved in. I don't know, Ulrich, man. So Peter and Tronte, like I mentioned before, I'm sus on both of them. Turns out they were together at the cabin in the woods, looking at the open door. There's kind of this cellar door that leads down to this room, and they're looking at that door. Much more to come from them, I think. But I don't really know what's going on with this duo. It's kind of an unlikely duo, and a duo that I just wouldn't want to fuck with because I think both of them are sus. Both have pretty sus actions at this point in the show. Alexander makes a call to the mammography center. We saw earlier in this episode Regina had sort of a run-in with them, kind of alludes to the fact that she has breast cancer, but Alexander confirms when he calls on his own after finding one of her finding one of her cards. They're together. I don't think I've talked about the Alexander-Regina relationship. There hasn't been much to talk about on that end, but they are a married couple, and he finds out that Regina has bad cancer. Honestly, one of the more wholesome couples by the end of the season, but Regina has bad cancer, not great. Alexander knows, but Regina doesn't know that he knows, so that's going to lead to their relationship developing throughout the end of the season. Ulrich, once he finds out that Hannah is the one who committed the rape accusation, he calls her poison. Finally, maybe this will be the end of them together. Hannah finally will get it through her thick fucking skull to leave my man alone, but no. She's going to take this a certain other way. But good for Ulrich finally figuring that out. He should apologize to Regina. I doubt that'll happen, but he does owe her an apology for all the shit that they put her through as a kid. Martha is in the school play and gives a very sad speech, causing her to bawl her eyes out on stage. Katharina runs up on stage to comfort her, so that was at least a nice moment for Katharina to kind of not redeem herself, but be more of a nice parent after we saw her slap her in the face. Granted, she's in high school, but slapping your kid is never okay. I don't know why I said granted she's in high school. You should never slap your kid. Dubcast Parenting 101, right? Nonetheless, nice moment between Martha and Katharina. Meanwhile, Jonas on his side quest has been exploring the caves, and when he goes into the door, the lights start shifting, so that's been our indicator that even though we haven't really known it yet, that is the indicator of time travel. So Jonas has initiated a time travel shift here where he's going to go somewhere else. Regina made a comment to Katharina, so Katharina made a radio call talking about how the town was unsafe. Obviously Mikkel disappeared, Mads had disappeared, Eric disappeared, and it's frustrating for Katharina because she's home alone by herself trying to take care of her kids, and Ulrich's out doing his own thing, trying to be like the one man to solve it all. And then Regina and her have an interaction in the school after Martha's play. They get into it. Seems like there's still some bad blood there between Katharina and Regina, even though Ulrich now knows that Hannah was the one who committed the rape accusation, not Regina. They always just assumed it was Regina. But good for Regina for standing up for herself. Although I don't like this like cat fight stuff. Like, no offense to the ladies out there, but like this was just, I thought maybe we could have had a peaceful interaction. But things happen. People get heated, so I understand it. Jonas, through his time travel initiation, spawns into 1986, the cave. And who pulls up next to him in the van but Hannah and her dad. So he talks to his own mother when she's like 14 years old. Crazy. Just another layer of complexity added to this story. And Ulrich is taking a look at the dead body in the morgue, that dead kid that appeared, with the background info from his mother and a cut on the chin. The young boy, it's looking like they found Mads in the year 2019, which makes no sense, but he did have a Walkman on him. So this is definitely Mads spawning dead in the present day. So some weird shit going on with the deaths in this town, and who's dying when and when they're showing up. It's all really weird. It's all making no sense. But that's how we wrap up episode 6. So my favorite from this episode was Ulrich. I thought he put in mad work to try and find out what happened to his son. He's onto something, questioning his dad, and then realizing it's Mads. Also telling Hannah she's poison. In retrospect, I didn't write that down, but she is poison. Least favorite is going to Tronte. Thought he was mad suspicious at the cabin with Peter and definitely up to no good. I just don't fuck with Tronte. I think something's going up with him. So that'll wrap up episode 6. Episode 7 is titled Crossroads, and we begin this episode with Yasin. Remember little Yasin, Elizabeth's friend? He wakes up in the torture room with the room we saw Eric in earlier in the season, and we cut to Helge, who says he remembers everything, which this begins a crazy, nice little 3 or 4 episode arc for Helge. He becomes a very important character to the story. So obviously he's been spewing in the past, but his words do mean something, and we will find out what those mean shortly. So Jonas is walking around doing his side quest thing, walking around in 1986, 2019 version of himself. He talks to a younger version of Regina, looking for Mikkel or Ines, and Regina's kind of not really well liked. It seems like she's kind of doing her own thing, listening to her own music, but she's willing to help Jonas enough in order to point him in the right direction. But she's kind of like, Jonas is a little bit weird, so a little weird interaction there, but it happened. Egon talks to Helge, who worked the night at the nuclear power plant the night that Mads disappears. Helge acts super suspect. Egon finds a big discovery that's going to lead some of the actions across the last couple episodes of the season, that Helge didn't take the forest road home. He took the state road home, which was very questionable to Egon. He wrote it in his little notebook there. So that's going to be a very important plot point moving forward. Ulrich has been doing some major work and finds out that Helge didn't show up to interview with Egan. So we actually just saw Egan and Helge talk, like, we're going to come meet you in a couple of days, but Ulrich's been putting in the research and finds out that Helge never did show up to do the interview with Egan. So Helge is definitely looking more and more suspicious as time goes on, especially this 1986 version of himself. And I think the present version of himself says he can change the future and the past. Giving that book to Claudia, A Journey Through Time, like, Helge was up to some shit. It's kind of like, it's not a veil being taken over your eyes, like, holy shit. It's kind of like a slow burn of just seeing how fucked up Helge is and what caused him to do all this stuff. So We have the stranger meeting with Jonas once again and warns him of changing events from the past. Obviously, Jonas is about to go talk to, not obviously, but Jonas is about to go talk to Mikhail and Ines, which if he goes and talks to them, he fucks up his future, which is like, with everything you have to when you make a show like this, you have to delicately handle time travel so much, and that you can't go back and change the future. It's like that on itself is a never-ending cycle. You never really will know what happens. So thought that was a nice moment for the stranger to go and talk to Jonas and kind of warn him about what he's about to do. You really need to think about what you're going to do before you go talk to your mother and father and grandmother in the future. Like, you can't do that. It would make him not born, and it's a life for a life. So Mikhail sacrificed his life to stay in there, eventually create Jonas. It's that whole thing of, would you go back and do this thing if it means screwing up your whole life? Like, you make one wrong move in the past and you're not even ever alive, which is a crazy thing to think about and a sad thing to think about. Now you're just dead because you never were a thing. And then I don't know what would happen to you in the present. That sounds pretty fucked up. You just wouldn't be there. You'd be dead. You'd be disappeared. Crazy. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Ulrich, after his actions with the police, he's been digging around a little bit too much. He ends up being suspended, and with that, he heads home finally and faces the Katharina confrontation of finding him to be cheating with Hannah. Very tough conversation. I think this is like the reckoning point for anyone who cheats. It's like, this conversation is going to happen at some point. At some point, it will happen. All cheaters do get caught. Never cheat, guys. Just be in a faithful relationship. It's not that hard. If you're not ready to be in a faithful relationship, get out of the relationship. It's not that hard. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir there, but all of you guys would never cheat. But people do cheat. This conversation was tough to listen to. So props to Katharina. She gives it to him pretty good, and they've had 3 kids together. One of their kids is missing, and you're out screwing Hannah. That dumb, dare I say, bitch. I hate Hannah. So I was living it up for this. I do like Ulrich, but good for Katharina for clocking him for the cheating. So back with Ulrich's mother, Jana. She is going to do some clocking of her own. She gets Helge. She noticed him arguing with a priest 33 years ago, and now that same man is here today, not a day older. So I believe that is Noah she is talking about. So Helge and Noah have some sort of relationship, which is important, but also even more important is the fact that Noah seemingly hasn't aged in 33 years, which is some weird time jump loop that he must be doing. Still need to get to my Noah theory, but I'm going to get to that later on. So Charlotte, she's been doing some investigative work of her own, and she is now buying into Ulrich's theory and questioning Helge's involvement in this case. Ulrich's been heavy on the Helge train now, very suspicious of him, and the lights flicker, and she finds a piece of wallpaper. She's down in that cellar near the log cabin from the creepy kid room, the torture room, so maybe some evidence for later on, but I don't think she's really catching on to that yet. Jonas tells Ines tells Hannah in the present day. See, this shit's frying me. Jonas tells Hannah in the present day that his dad loved her very much. Nice moment for Hannah where she hasn't had a lot of people really being nice to her, with Ulrich kind of crashing out on her. Jonas is able to tell her, Dad did love you very much, and then burns a letter from Mikhail stating who Mikhail actually was. Probably for the better that he does this, even though we know there's other versions of the letter floating around out there. I don't know if we ever got the true, full gist of the letter. I think we only got the part that Mikhail was Michael. I could be wrong on that. But Jonas decides, you know what, I think that's good enough. Hannah doesn't need to see this letter. She doesn't need to know about Mikhail being Michael. I think that would just confuse people. We have to keep the storylines. I'm not talking about the viewer, I'm talking about people even in general. It's like, what the fuck are we even doing then? There's time travel. I think that would just blow people's brains. If someone told you the events at dark, you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? My whole life is a lie. Probably better off. Good decision from Jonas to burn the letter. So to end this episode out, we do have Helge. I've mentioned he's being sussed out now, but we find out that he actually was somewhat involved in the killing of Mads. Noah's there, and Noah is seemingly in the room with Helge, tying up Mads, writing 2 dates on the wall, and this is another what WTF is happening. I mean, it wasn't too bad of a cliffhanger, but it was just what the fuck is actually going on. So Noah and Helge are working in cahoots, and Jana did see them arguing 33 years ago, and we'll get into their relationship shortly, but some sus stuff to end out episode 7. So my favorite from this episode is going to be Jonas. I fuck with him, just not fucking up the timeline. Thank you from a viewer's perspective. I feel like it would be, thrown all around the world if he decided to, go and talk to Mikael and Hannah, and good morals for not wanting to screw that up. Least favorite is going to Helge. I was skeptical at the time that he's truly behind all of this, but his younger self has a checkered path of actions here. Obviously, we see what kind of leads him down that path, but it was very odd. Out of 1986 Helge, so Helge gets my least favorite for episode 7. Episode 8 is titled As You Sow, So You Shall Reap. So we start this episode out with another Einstein quote, this one saying, "Hell's empty, all the devils are here." So yeah, I mean, honestly, after watching this season, I pretty much agree at that point. You got a lot of devils in this fucking season. No need for them in hell because Noah can't fucking die, apparently. He's been the same for 33 years. That's what I'm referencing. Anyways, moving on. We have a young Egan, very young Egan, summoned to the building plot for the power plant, and there's 2 more dead bodies found here, 2 younger boys. Ulrich has been doing his hard research. We've been covering that, but he finally finds the path to the past, potentially, so he's going to try and go back to change the past or try and find where Mikael ended up. Coins for Claudia at Helge's house after being forced to strip naked. Weird situation here with Helge in a 1953 version of himself. I don't know what was going on with 1953, but he walks in the house and he's like, "Do you have the coins for Claudia?" After, he comes out from doing whatever in the wilderness, comes home, his mom's like, "Strip naked right now," and then grab the coins for Claudia. Very weird. I don't know, 1950s people out there, if you're still with me, was this a thing that happened? You had to come home and strip naked? I don't know. I thought that was very odd. So we have the body examiner in 1953. I don't know if I even mentioned, we're just in 1953 now. I don't know exactly when that happened. I think it's this episode is the 1953 up. So we're in 1953, which is 33 years away from 1986. So it's a 33-year time jump. 1986, move back 33 years. Now we're in 1953. I do think we're going to get another time jump later on, but we'll discuss that when it happens. So right now we have 3 timelines. We have the 1953 timeline, 1986, and 2019 timeline. So this is episode mostly takes place in 1953. So the body examiner in 1953 with the 2 younger boys says the clothes of the dead kids are from China. There's 1 redhead and 1 Mediterranean/Arabic kid. Most of people out there, I'm assuming everyone's thinking this, it's Eric and Yasin. Obviously, we haven't seen Eric in a couple episodes, and we saw Yasin put on the torture helmet. So most likely, both of them are perished and ended up in 1953 somehow. So you have the kids from 2019 ending up in 1953, going back 66 years, and then you have Mads dying in 2019, or ending up dead in 2019. So it's really like, what's happening here? How is this possibly happening? I don't know what's going on. It's hard to figure out what's going on with, especially with the torture room and the whole Noah of it all. That part's a little bit hard to figure out. So Helge in 1953 does have 2 bullies. They really do some mean work. I know this is back in my day, back in the old days, but they beat him up and then piss on him. And then who stumbles through the woods to kind of save the day for him? It's Ulrich, the 2019 version of Ulrich coming through the woods to save a younger version of Helge from the bullies. He says next time, beat the shit out of him, leave no mark, do better, figure this shit out. I forget exactly what he says, but it comes back to bite him later on. Nonetheless, Ulrich in 1953 meets the version of Agnes and Trante, this being his father and grandmother, and then they have this weird living situation where they're driving to go live with Claudia and her mother, and Claudia is the tutor of Helge. That's why he had the coins for Claudia. So really weird, this whole dynamic of Agnes is some sort of, I don't know why I said some sort of, it's Pride Month. Agnes seemingly is has this lesbian sway over Claudia. I don't know. It was she touched her and they were making weird faces. I'm not even sure if this was exactly Claudia. No, Claudia's a kid at this point. Claudia's mother it was very kind of weird dynamics going on there. I'm not sure what was happening, so just disregard that if that means nothing. So Claudia is Helge's tutor. That is important. So we have Helge's father being the kind of Rockwell of this season, where he was the person who wanted to build this power plant. He's very powerful. He's very influential. Helge is out on a walk with Claudia and Trante. So interestingly enough, Trante and Claudia do end up hooking up later on in life. Now I'm connecting those dots, and they're kind of connecting here. Claudia is very interested in him. She's like, boys will definitely like you in this town. Not boys, girls will definitely like you in this town. Kind of hinting that she likes him. They don't really do anything in this episode. They're freaking 9 years old. But poor Helge is lacking behind them. Kind of the odd man out of this relationship at this point. And so while he's got the dog to deal with, he throws a stick to the dog he throws a stick for the dog to go fetch into the caves, and then the dog disappeared. This made me super sad. I'm so glad the dog came back. Thank God. But this poor dog is missing for now because Helge threw the stick into the caves to try and get him to disappear. He does, and then he's like, oh, fuck, what did I do? And then he dips. And they don't even realize that Helge dips. So poor Helge, we see he's kind of a thrown away child, and he had a tough upbringing. So while he's doing his own little side quest, he collects dead birds because they're dead. When they're dead, they're beautiful. Ulrich comes back to basically try and do the Don Cheadle Thanos thing, kill baby Helge so none of this happens. His boy doesn't disappear. To try and change the future, he starts beating him with a rock and then stops, which makes sense as to why the 1986 version of Helge has a very damaged face on one side of his face. Is because Ulrich smashed him with a rock, but he does stop and seemingly doesn't kill him. Obviously doesn't kill him or else it would fuck up the future. But with that helps us understand why we have him beaten up later on in life. Also, we learn Trante has these sort of weird burn marks on his arm as a child. Definitely some weird shit going on with Trante as always. We have the old lady, who we come to find out is old version of Claudia, staring at pictures of everyone and their connections. So we have the stranger trying to do something through time, Claudia is trying to do something through time, and Noah is trying to do something through time. So we have good, question mark, and Claudia, we don't really know what she's up to, and then Noah. So good versus bad versus Claudia. Kind of a dichotomy of these three time travelers. We don't really know what all of their intentions are. One from the past, one from the present, and one from the future. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. The bearded man. This is the stranger wants the older gentleman in the clock shop to fix his machine so he can stop the wormhole. He's seen the future, and this man must help him. And this man also has Ulrich's phone from 1986, which he left in his coat in his shop in 1953. So this will be an important piece of the machine moving forward. But it's unclear what the stranger's goal here is, and this clock man is kind of just like a side character. But what is the future that needs to be stopped? And we're unclear on that. And that wraps up episode 8. So just more questions, hopefully more answers, right? Favorite of this episode, I guess I got to give to Helge. Fended off Ulrich decently well as a 9-year-old kid. Kind of empathetic to him at this point, to see him be left in the dust by Claudia and Trante, kind of disregarded as a kid. So that kind of sucked for Helge. So I'll give it to Kid Helge as my favorite. Least favorite is going to Ulrich. He tried to go the baby Thanos route, and it just wasn't fun to watch. Feel like Ulrich kind of lost his cool this episode, kind of diving into that wormhole of only believing that it could be Helge who was causing all this madness. So I didn't like seeing that out of one of my favorite characters, Ulrich. So that'll wrap up episode 8. Episode 9 is titled Everything is Now, and everything is fucking now with these last 2 episodes. Crazy shit going on. So let's dive right into it here. Starting out this episode, we're back in 1953 with Agnes, who we met last episode. She has a husband who was a priest who she thinks is dead. I don't have to connect those dots for you. That's Noah. So Noah's been around since 1953. Confirmed some crazy stuff going on here. Interested to see what's up with Noah and his backstory. He's been alive for over 66 years. Granted, a lot of these characters have, but he was a husband in 1953, so Noah really is looking like the villain of this season and show, big time. Helge's mother, who, we saw make Helge strip naked in the last episode, says that he might not be who he thinks he is, his father's kid. This was a confusing one. Helge might not be who he thinks he is, his father's kid, so he won't be as good as Helge's dad. Kind of a weird statement. I didn't think I might have wrote that one down wrong. Nonetheless, she is talking to Noah in 1953, so some really interesting stuff with Noah happening in this episode. Egan finds Ulrich and chases after him. You know, it's a very odd situation where Ulrich was trying to get help from Egan to potentially see if one of those kids is Mikkel. And, you know, he's been fucking around, beating the shit out of kids, so he's a person of interest. Egan finds him and chases after him and ultimately is able to get the upper hand on him and arrest him. And Egan Ulrich believes that he changed the course of time and is going to, having beaten up Helge, now something will happen to save Miguel, but he's going to be put behind bars, man. So that's tough for Ulrich. And I don't think he changed the course of time. He actually just, it's all one timeline, because now that he always goes back in time to beat the shit out of Helge, because Helge has the fucked up face. Like, it's crazy, bro. It's crazy that all this. It's like we see it unfold, but that unfolding is part of the timeline, you know. And I can't wait to have my mind fucking bent in half by season 2 and 3. Nonetheless, Ulrich is now behind bars in 1953, which is a little bit interesting there. A person I don't believe we've met before runs through the woods with a gun and a bag of things and damaged chest. This is someone we have met before, but this is a younger version of themselves in 1986. Speaking of 1986, we're picking that up with Claudia. Remember, she is now in charge of the power plant in 1986, and she finds her dog 33 years later as it runs out from the caves. You know, she has that little sus cave with all the barrels. So she's able to reunite with her dog. That kind of tings alarm bells in her head. So that kind of just walked into her lap, maybe causing her to be a time traveler 33 years later in 2019. We don't really know her story yet. So Katharina, in the present day, hears from Hannah that it may have been Regina. Oh no, this is in 1986 still. So she hears from Hannah. Hannah is trying to push blame on the rape accusation. She pushes it to Regina, saying maybe Regina was the one who told the rape lie. This, of course, leads to Katharina confronting Regina, but the man with the gun saves her by threatening both Ulrich and Katharina. And we reveal who this is. It is Alexander. So here we go, another young couple that got together, Alexander and Regina. We see with Alexander playing the hero over Katharina and Ulrich and saving Regina at this time. There is some suspect stuff going on with Alexander, but we'll get to that in a bit. There was an explosion in the cave in 1986, and Claudia tries to look into it but is rebutted. We find out Helge and others were there. Egan makes another inquiry into Helge's property, but leaves after not seeing him there. This is a very weird scene of Helge. We see Helge being the one to make these little trinkets that attract the kids, that attracted Yassine, that attracted Mads maybe, in his little cabin. When Egan comes to knock on the door, obviously missed the interview with him before. He knocks on the door and he's not there, so Egan's going to give up on this shit. But obviously Egan's in 1986 is much 33 years older than we saw him in 1953. Is kind of out in this whole police work, doesn't really want to be spending too much time when he doesn't have to be, which is unfortunate because Helge barely escapes, but he hides in the cabin. You know, it sucked. Alexander, his little backstory, he was sneaking around in the forest with multiple passports and a gun, and of course, who of all people in this whole show could be watching him? It's Hannah. So Hannah now has some dirt on Alexander. I believe this is in this episode she's going to take that bag of passports and the gun, and we see her hold on to it into the present day. So now she has some baggage on Alexander. Helge, in the present day of 1986, is working with Noah to create the room that the boys are tortured in, which is supposed to be a time machine. And yes, this does end up being a time machine, as we see Mads is transported into the future 33 years, and Eric and Yassine are transported into the past 66 years. So the time machine does end up working, kind of a fucked method of making it happen by having boys strapped into a chair and squeezing their eyes out, and they're dead, but they time travel. So I don't know what the story is that Noah preached at this version of Helge, but it worked, unfortunately, into the bad results of these boys. Hannah still has the gun and the passports, as I mentioned before, from Alexander's drop-off point. That'll come into play in the last episode, I believe. Katharina confronts Hannah about the affair and lies again. Hannah lies again, of course, gaslighting Katharina into believing that Ulrich wanted to leave Katharina and be with her. I mean, this woman's the devil, bro. Like, I hate. This is when things start clicking for you. Like, the rape shit is terrible. You should never falsely accuse someone of rape. Obviously, I don't need to be the one to tell you that. But now she's like spewing and gaslighting on it as well. I think they're gonna try and give Hannah like a redeeming storyline, is my guess. Fuck Hannah. I will never like Hannah. I'll say that right now, unless she has a clutch moment like Paul Kellerman in Prison Break. That's not gonna happen though. I'm done on Hannah. Like, fuck Hannah after this bullshit for real. So moving on, Claudia reappears in 2019. This is the older version of herself, the time traveler version that I alluded to. She meets Bartos for the first time, gives him a picture to give to Regina. Obviously, Bartos is the son of Regina and Alexander, which is Bartos just fitting in weirdly here. You know, there's all these people being the parents of whatever. It's all a very weird story. But Claudia did speak to Bartos for the first time. So that was interesting that they never had spoken before. Hannah pulls out the passport and gun to blackmail Alexander into destroying Ulrich, take everything from him. Luckily for Ulrich, he's locked in a prison cell 66 years ago. But fuck Hannah, man. You know, you did this too. You're not innocent in all this. The false rape charge, gaslighting Katharina, you know, all the fucked up shit that Hannah's done in the past couple, she's not innocent in this either. She's part of the affair. Like, it's, damn, Hannah, chill, bro. Just has no chill at all. And yeah, so now she's on a warpath against Ulrich. Too bad he's in 1953, honey. Martha confronts Jonas about being distant. Obviously Jonah just learned that Martha is his great aunt, I believe, or just aunt in general. Yeah, so Jonas is like, I don't think I should really be hanging out with you, but they still kiss, and he can't explain why it's wrong, obviously, without revealing everything. So that's an awkward situation between Jonas and his aunt, Martha, who's the same age as him and who they've seemingly hooked up before. Oh, we know they've hooked up before, at least made out. So that's awkward for Jonas. You know, he's going to have to start living this life a little bit differently. Alexander makes a call to the eye patch guy at the police station. The eye patch guy, I don't even know his name. He's been kind of a third person in the police station. Like, we have Ulrich and Charlotte, and the eye patch guy is kind of like Charlotte's go-to guy to figure shit out, or like just get like small things done. But he's now on the take from Alexander, so he's helping protect the interests of the nuclear power plant in Alexander, we assume. So that's a crazy little reveal right there in itself. Meanwhile, Regina finds the stranger's drawings. The stranger had stayed in the hotel room with Regina. Regina owns this hotel. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of traffic in Regina's hotel, by the way. But nonetheless, she finds all of his drawings on the wall. You know, he's had these crazy, like, conspiracy level type shit of everything that's happening on the wall. Remember, we saw him cross out the where is Mikkel to the when is Mikkel. Probably should have taken those down before he left, brother. But maybe he left them up there to be fine because he knows that's part of the timeline. Not knowing who that actually is. Nonetheless, though, Regina now seemingly could have an idea of what's going on, maybe a little bit. Don't know. Noah and Bartos, we saw them meet before. Noah has made him an offer, and Bartos seems like he's inclined to accept after everything Noah had predicted will happen, including Claudia meeting him for the first time. So good job for Noah. I guess he pulled a LeBron calling the 80-point game. He predicted everything that would happen, and it did happen for Bartos. So Bartos seems to be inclined to accept that offer, whatever it is, from Noah. Alexander, he begins working with Claudia under the plant with the barrels. We see he just wanted a job in 1986. Obviously, kind of came from this weird background of a different country and had all his passport and the gun and weird stuff. So him being able to get this job with Claudia, working under the plant with the barrels, that's how he's going to eventually be the one to take over the power plant in the future. The stranger is up to something he has a set of barrels in his truck now, so these barrels clearly have nuclear content or whatever, but it's some suspect stuff going on with that. Old Claudia asks the time guy, the old version of Claudia, comes into his shop and asks him to make a machine that will set time straight. So now we have the machine guy working for both Claudia and the stranger. We don't really know who's he's aligned with, what's going on here. And that's going to wrap up episode 9, just a crazy episode and even more crazy shit to follow. So my favorite from this episode is going to Regina. I feel like she's about to potentially cook with something, and she was the most respectable and not up to bad things in this episode. Least favorite going to the worst character on the show, Hannah. I mean, come on, what are we doing? She just wants to destroy Ulrich. He's got a family, man. And, he cheated. The wife knows. What more could you possibly want from this man? He's locked in a fucking cell in 1953, Hannah. Damn. So that'll wrap up episode 9. Episode 10 is titled Alpha and Omega. And although this has a little bit less action than episode 9, there is some very important nuggets that do happen in this episode. So we do get a lot of answers, which is good. Starting this episode out, we have Peter. He is in the cabin, kind of just in there hanging out. Obviously, something had happened with his little past, not little past, but in the not so distant present, he's been having a lot of stuff going on with his marriage. All of a sudden, a dead Mads comes through the void after he does a prayer. I don't know if this was because he did the prayer or that it just came through at the same time, seemingly. Seems like Peter did not want Mads to be dead, so this sort of clears Peter in the moment. At this time, he calls Trante, and then Claudia appears and says, we have to take him to the place where he is to be found, the old version of Claudia. So interesting stuff here where maybe Peter and Trante aren't that bad. They are actually in alliance with Claudia, who at this point were meant to trust Claudia, I think, at some level. So interesting to see that little trio deal with the death of Mads. Obviously, him having appeared through there, Claudia knew it was going to happen, so a lot to unpack there. Hopefully in season 2 we'll get some answers behind that. Jonas talks to Ines in the present day in 2019. So far, this is all in the present day. She obviously had read the letter that Jonas read. She says she always kind of knew that Mikhail was trapped in a different generation. Jonas has a tough moment of all he's going through. He doesn't really have anyone to vent to, but now that he knows Ines knows about Mikhail, that'll maybe help him have somebody to go through and talk to. And Ines, he's a little bit upset with Ines having the potential to stop what happened with Mikhail, but then you wouldn't be there, Jonas. You gotta take the ups with the downs. This was a tough scene to watch, though, with Jonas kind of going through it in the moment. Ulrich is put in jail in 1953 and drops hints to the younger version of Egan that he is from the future. So maybe this will be something that'll be able to help oust Ulrich from jail if Egan actually takes what he's saying seriously. Obviously, there was the phone. I don't know if Egan ever saw that phone, but I don't know. I don't know how you prove you're from the future without just saying it. Jonas and Bartos have a disagreement at school after Marta had told Bartos everything about how Jonas was acting off and how they did hook up. And, Bartos doesn't really get the clues of what's going on. I think he does know more than he's letting on, or we're led on to believe in this scene. Obviously, with Noah having told him everything that was going to happen, you have to think that somehow Jonas' involvement with Martha was involved in that somehow. But there's going to be a little bit of a fight here at school. Martha tells him to break it up. Seems like this friendship is done for now, which could play a big factor in the future of the show, because we see Jonas and the stranger are in an alliance, and Bartos and Noah are potentially in an alliance, so two groups could be going head to head right there. Charlotte blows off Peter on the phone. That felt like a pretty missed opportunity when Peter's calling her, telling her he has something to tell, or he tells her he has something to tell her, and then she doesn't answer. That felt like a pretty missed opportunity for Charlotte. Obviously, things happen, but felt like she should have picked up that phone call. Old Helge tries to persuade the 86 Helge from stopping doing whatever he's about to do. Even when you see a future version of yourself telling you to stop doing something, not always going to work. We saw old Helge go back into 1986 to try and figure out how to stop everything, even through his dementia and everything he's going through. So clearly there's something important that's about to happen, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be able to be successful. Noah and Helge have their next target, and it's going to be Jonas. What the fuck moment. I thought this might be pretty bad for Jonas, but knowing what we know now, everything is meant to happen the way it happens. I wasn't really ever concerned for Jonas. We can talk about that in a second, but yeah, pretty bad on paper that those two are going to try and get Jonas, especially considering they're in 1986 and Jonas is in 2019. So Innes is going to adopt Mikkel officially. We kind of figured that this would happen, but it does happen already. Kind of thought this already kind of went through, but here we go. Nice moment between Innes and Mikkel. Obviously, we see throughout the season, Innes does take very good care of Mikkel. Charlotte sees Ulrich's photo in the 50s as a potential child murderer. So it turns out that Egan is going to pin him as a potential suspect, which is hilarious because 33 years later, he's always trying to pin stuff on the teen version of Ulrich. So those two just seem like they're always going to have a argument between themselves. But this is a clue to Charlotte that Ulrich has traveled to the past, and I believe this is the last we see of Charlotte. So there's a lot of characters moving into the next season of like, where are they at? What do they think of everything going on? I'd love to see what Charlotte thinks after seeing her colleague in jail in the 1950s as a child murderer, as we see Ulrich get beaten in jail by the cops. Tough situation he's in where they're probably asking him questions that he doesn't know the answer to. He's from the future. He literally can't even explain what's going on. So that sucks for Ulrich. Bearded man, we learn now, sees Jonas while he's being held captive in the room. Finally, the stranger, it is revealed that he is an older version of Jonas. He goes through the same thing over and over again. He cannot let Jonas out of the room or else it breaks the cycle and the timeline. So yeah, unfortunately, all you people out there told me to go get a graphic to follow the show. I looked up a graphic. The one thing I was spoiled on throughout the season was this big reveal right here that this guy was Jonas in the future. I thought it was going to come out earlier, but this ends up being one of the later things revealed in the show. So I was kind of aware of the fact that this was older version of Jonas throughout. But yeah, cool. Jonas obviously is an important character, probably the main character of the show. So interesting to see how his future self is different from his present self. It's going to be the same timeline, so that's just another layer of complexity we're adding to the show. We have future Jonas, we have present Jonas. He's one of the only people who really has a future version of himself, seemingly, so that'll be important for season 2, I'm guessing, especially considering where we end up at the end of this season. But yeah, Jonas doesn't let himself out. Makes sense. He's been through the exact same situation. He has to go through what he's about to go through in order to get to where he's going to be, so that makes perfect sense in my mind. Helge's car is smoked by someone at nighttime when he's driving home. It's the old version of Helge. So this is kind of a weird thing here where, we saw, why didn't he take that state road home? He takes the other road home and then he just gets absolutely T-boned by old version of Helge in order to try and stop him. Does he stop him though? That's the big question. We have the old version of Jonas, aka the future version of Jonas, is going to try and destroy the whole, but he will be what triggers the origin of it. Claudia lied to him. Old Helge is dead. So I think that was Noah telling us all this. It seems like Noah has a step up on the future version of Jonas. We'll see if that comes to fruition. And where does Claudia fix into all this? I think those are the three time travelers, main people. Obviously Ulrich is traveled time, old version of Helge is traveled time, but it seems like the people really in control of what's going on and actually knowing what's going on is Jonas, Claudia, and Noah. So I think I explained that before, but those are the three I think that are mainly in control of the situation. So who's really right? I guess we'll find out soon. So once again, old Helge is dead, so that old version of himself, the Dimension Man, is dead. Unfortunate to see. He's out of the picture now, but he did his best to try and stop the present version of Helge in 1986. It doesn't work though. Obviously, he's going to live and become the old version of himself, which is crazy. All these timeline events lining up and all that. But Innes officially takes in Mikkel. This is kind of the end of the season. Little run through here about where we're ending with all these characters. So Innes, we see in 1986 officially taking Mikkel. In 2019, Peter and Charlotte embrace. The lights go out across everywhere basically because there's going to be a time travel or someone trying to destroy the whole, which is the older version of Jonas. A huge thing is over the cave. This weird, there is this sense of spirituality and what's the word I'm looking for? Extraterrestrial, like godly type stuff. So this huge thing circulating over the caves. Jonas is looking at 1953. Helge through a portal, and then the portal goes in the murder or in the torture room where the old 1953 version of Helge is after being beat to shit by Ulrich. And as soon as they touch each other, something happens, and all of a sudden Jonas wakes up in a different world, and he is now in the future. Seemingly 2052, if I had to guess, 33 years later. But people are wearing masks. looks to be a whole different situation that we're about to dive into season 2. So wrapping up episode 10, my favorite of this episode was Jonas. Thought he cooked here, old version of himself, and then he also may be cooked, but got a lot of cool intel on the future and what's going to happen, and also now he knows the stranger was him, so maybe that will help in the future with discoveries and all that. Least favorite's got to be Noah, just a bad guy and scheming something against Claudia and Jonas. Don't like Noah, very intimidating individual. So yeah, that's season 1 of Dark. I'm very excited for season 2. Had a lot to say, mostly just trying to figure out and wrap my brain around everything. If I got anything wrong specifically about season 1, please comment down below in the chat. Let me know what I missed on, what I got right. Don't comment what I got right if everything I've said is right. I think initially this is a big show to deal with, but once you get your little graphic that you can alt tab to, it's not as bad to try and figure out what's going on. I feel like I mastered the 3 timelines somewhat well. Figure out who most of the characters are, so I'm excited. Now less episodes, only 8 episodes in season 2 and 3. I'm sure the podcast will be just as long or longer with the probably level of deception and shit we're gonna get in those 2 seasons. But yeah, that'll wrap up Dark season 1. What were you guys' thoughts on Dark? It will be interesting to see how I compare the season to the other seasons. But yeah, Dark season 1 is in the books. Other podcasts, we did an NBA stream this past Tuesday. A lot of fun with a couple guests. And then the UFC, hopefully I got Shane to come on again to give a nice long breakdown of UFC 316, but we will see if that is the case. Nonetheless, expect more content in the future. Bullet Train movie review coming soon. Godzilla -1 review coming soon, so expect more TV content. Dark coverage will continue, and yeah, we'll get into it all. So appreciate you staying this long to watch the end of this video. Any comments from me in the chat, any likes, any dislikes, subscriptions would be very appreciated. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, be easy, y'all.